Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mr. Allen is Cool. Today we're going to talk about using value scales to draw, and we're going to be doing it with pastels. So let's get an introduction to, first off, what's a value scale and what's a pastel and the other tools you're going to need. Value scale, right there, is showing tone or color from lightest to darkest. All right. Pastels, what we're going to be using to make this happen today is pastels. Pastels are kind of like chalk. There's a nice group of pastels that we have. They're kind of like chalk, but they're a little bit harder. And they come in a wide variety of colors, and you can mix colors and you can blend colors very nicely with them. Some of the other tools that you're going to need for today's lesson are a pencil, a blending stump, and an eraser. Ultimately, what we're going for is to make a cubist portrait, and these skills will come in handy. Okay, let's get down to business and start making our value scale. As I mentioned a moment ago, value scale is showing a color or a tone that goes from lightest to darkest. And there's a lot of different ways we can do this. This is a kind of a classic one. Sometimes you might have like white here and it'll go all the way to the most intense level of the color. Sometimes, like we have in mine one where it's like lightest through the color to black. Sometimes you might have just white to black and all different tones in between. This is helpful, and you're going to see this later when we do our drawings, because it helps you understand the different levels so that when you're making a drawing, you can choose the level deliberately. And there's different ways people do this. Some people call it 0 and 4. So there's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I've also seen it where this is 1 and this is 5. You know, it really doesn't matter so much. Because the concept is on one end you've got the lightest, and on the other end you've got the darkest. So here's how you should go about it. Get yourself a pencil and begin by drawing a bar on your paper. Alright? And then divide it into 5 parts. I've done this like 100 times, so I'm a little more comfortable with it. But you know, you don't really have to measure it out. But do be careful with it, because you want to do a good job, okay? Then choose a color. Alright, now there's lots of different colors, different ways that you can go about this. That last one I used green. This time around, maybe I'll choose a blue, because I'm kind of a fan of blue colors. So I picked the blue color, that's sort of my key color. I'm also going to use black, and I'm going to use orange, and I'm going to show you how that works in a little bit. I personally like to start with either the darkest or the lightest color. And you know, I'm going to do it like I did with this one. So the lightest color is pretty easy because it's going to be white. And so I'll start with the darkest color. And the first color I'm going to put down here is blue. Okay, and I'll work in my blue. And then I'll grab my blending stump and use my blending stump to kind of smooth the color. Alright, so this is kind of just a regular process. Smooth the color in. Alright, put a little tone down, then blend the color, then put a little more tone down. Now I'm going to use a little bit of black over the top of it, and then I'm going to blend that black into the blue. Alright, as you can probably see, the black is a very powerful color. And remember, I talked about this a little bit in the previous lesson. I tend not to use black for toning things, for making them darker, shading things, just because it is so strong. But in this situation, not much we can do about it. We've got to use the black, and then I'm going to slowly work down. This next one here, I might add some blue, and then remember this from a previous lesson. You can take the complement of a color, in this case orange, and if you add it to the color, then what happens is it has a graying effect. And then move into the blue, and then I'll move in lighter blue all the way to the white. Now I'm not going to do the whole thing here, because I already have a finished one. And really, we should take time and be careful with this. It definitely benefits you to be careful and do a neat and tidy job with it, because it teaches you control over the material, which is what you're going to want for both this practice exercise and for our final portraits. One thing I did want to show you is that using the eraser, you can use the eraser not to only to kind of make mistakes, right? But also as a highlighter. So with this one here, when I was working on it, I put a bit of the green down. This is my middle green, right? And I put a bit of the green down and blended it with my stump. And then I used the eraser to kind of pick up just some of the color in there so that it has a nice gradation effect. All right? So remember, of course, you make mistakes, you can use the eraser, but the eraser is also really good for adding highlights in areas. Okay, so now it's time to put these to use. The value scale, as I said, is mostly a way to practice and get familiar with the techniques. Now it's time to do a bit of drawing. All right, so here is an apple, all right, or a drawing of an apple. And I've done it partially, but I've left some of it unfinished so you can see how the process goes. In the classroom, I have two charts. There is this one here, which breaks down different areas that you can find dark and light. See, this is a different kind of tonal scale, value scale. I on purpose picked one with more because it would make you sort of synthesize the information you practice with new information that's similar. And you can see here, it divides up the apple into different areas of tone. All right. There's another one in the classroom too. This one here. So if you want something that's a little bit more suggestive, meaning you kind of have to sort out for yourself where the darks and lights are. This is a good challenge, and this one's also a little softer. So this one's going to be, when you do this one, it's going to be more areas that are already designated, and this one you're going to have a little bit more blending. You choose whichever one makes you happy is the right one to do. All right, and don't worry about being perfect on this. Right now, the goal is to acquire skills and get comfortable with it, so that when you do it a final time for the portrait, you're really ready to go and you can use what you've learned. The goal with this one is to learn. So you can see here, I used my green, toned it in with some black. I'm following this chart right here. And really, it's a lot like doing the value scale. I drew out the areas with my pencil first because I thought that would be easier to pay attention to. And then now I'm just kind of going in and picking it up. So here, I'll want to do this area here, and I'll make it maybe a little bit lighter than this first area here. So I'll tone in. I'm not going to do the whole thing here because you don't need to sit and watch me make a drawing. It's more fun for you to just do the drawing yourself. Then I'm going to grab my blending stump, grab a clean area. Now I don't have any here at the moment, but I will leave some sandpaper out so that if your blending stump starts to get a little dirty, what you can do is rub it on the sandpaper and it'll clean off all the dust and the tone that's already on there. And check this out, I'm kind of going right up against where the dark area is so that it gets a nice transition in there. And then watch, I'm going to show you how the eraser trick right there. So let's say maybe I wanted this top area a little bit lighter. Got my eraser, give it a little bit of a scrub in there, and then knock the crumbs off. Do not blow them into your neighbor, please. They won't thank you for that. And there we go. Now you can see we've got some lighter area in there. All right, so your goal is to make a value chart. All right, do a good job of it, give it the old college try and make sure you really kind of put into having a good one. And then choose one of the apple templates and draw an apple. All right, and the apple itself is going to go in the process portfolio. So please, please, please put your name on it. And also remember that as it's developing, I'm looking for effort, right? I'm looking that you're trying to do a good job, even if it doesn't turn out perfect. If you put the effort in, we'll all be able to see it. All right. You all have a good time in the classroom. If you do finish early, I say just grab some more paper, keep using the pastels, and go ahead and draw whatever tickles your fancy. All right, bye-bye, everybody.